I made some social media videos about my experience making these ceramic fortune cookies, and the whole premise of those original videos was that I made them for my birthday party as party favors, but I ended up not using them because I gave out ramekins instead. I kind of asked the internet what to do with all the unused fortune cookies, and I received hundreds of suggestions. There were all sorts of ideas, from using them as chopstick rests, which don't work by the way, to Christmas ornaments, to leaving them all over the city with inspiring notes inside. I did actually leave a few around the city without notes, and a week later I checked back on one at the random gas station and it was actually still there, which I thought was funny. Anyway, I had an Instagram inbox full of requests to buy them, so I decided let's go for it and open up an online store to allow people to buy the ones I had, and then I additionally set up a pre-order so that they could be made to order. I ended up reaching 254 orders, which was pretty overwhelming, so I embarked on what has been a 7-week project to complete all the orders, which is a way longer time period than I anticipated spending on them. In fact, on the ordering site, I noted a 3 to 4 week turnaround on them, but because most people ordered as soon as I put up the site and posted about it, I actually had a rush of orders all about the same time, and I couldn't meet the 4-week turnaround for some of the orders, and I had to email some people to say that it would actually take a little over 5 weeks in the end. Nobody canceled, which was nice. The orders came from all over the world: Canada, Australia, Spain, Sweden, Singapore, England. It was all pretty crazy. I sold them as a set of 2 for $22 and a set of 5 for $40, which included shipping in the US. So the international orders totally humbled me because of certain people's willingness to pay as much in shipping as the fortune cookies themselves cost. One thing I found interesting was that I tried to price them as low as I could reasonably go, and even then I still got a little bit of trolling from my pricing, like people saying I was just out to make money on them. So I wanted to take the opportunity to explain the cost, because let me tell you, there is no getting rich on these at the price I set them at. The main issue is that while these fortune cookies are really easy to make, they took a lot of babying throughout the process and a lot of time to make. So while the main part of the formation is simply cutting a circle and folding it twice, everything after that is pretty involved and there is a fair amount of lossage. Here's a little bit of background. After folding the shapes, I cover lightly in plastic, wait 24 hours, and then start cleaning up the folds and the edges. The thing with the clay I use, which is porcelain by the way, is that there's very little grit in the clay to prevent it from cracking when bent in such an extreme way. Clay has a memory, and as it dries, it likes to go back to the position it was in previously, so a folded up fortune cookie likes to unfold slightly as it is drying, which causes a crack when the clay moves. So I just spent a lot of time trying to repair the cracks over and over again as the fortune cookies dried over time. It was kind of like a whack-a-mole when the cracks appeared as the drying progressed. But one thing I learned by the end of the project that saved a lot of time is that I should just accept the cracking and not dry the pieces too slowly. I'd been wrapping tightly in plastic to try to prevent the cracking by drying slower, but actually the slow drying didn't help that much since the pieces would crack either way, so I was better off just accepting the cracks and saving time by drying a little bit faster. I suppose too, if I chose a different type of clay, I could save myself a bunch of time if I wanted to do this again. I did sign and put the year on about half of them, but I didn't want to sign them all because I figured some people might want theirs to be clean from any markings. Once the fortune cookies dried out, they went into the kiln for their first firing, and yet another thing I underestimated was how long it takes to load hundreds of pieces into a kiln. I think I just didn't calculate that when you take a short action like moving an item from one spot to another and then multiply that by a couple hundred pieces, that really adds up. After the initial firing, I cleaned them up for glazing, sometimes sanding them for any rough spots. I offered the fortune cookies in a half glazed and an unglazed option. About 95% of the orders came in for the glazed option. I preferred those as well, but I did find it interesting that most people agreed. Too bad that the unglazed version is so much easier to make because I didn't need to send the unglazed ones through a separate glazing process. For the glazed ones, I dip glazed them before firing a second time. Meanwhile, the unglazed ones just skip to the final firing, which is what makes them so much easier, not to mention there was essentially a 100% success rate on the unglazed ones because most of the things that go wrong happen with the glaze. When the fortune cookies came out of the second firing, I used a 200 grit diamond sanding pad to sand all the raw edges just to make them more smooth before shipping them off. And packing was its own beast, yet another thing I think I underestimated in terms of time and cost. I spent many full days just packing and got some help from others too with the packing. So from beginning to end, the time it took was fairly intense and just way more than I anticipated. In terms of costs between the shipping fees, the Shopify website hosting and credit card transaction fees, and the cost of packing materials, I'd say I was approaching roughly $7 to $10 per order in extraneous costs, not to mention the actual cost of the time and materials for the fortune cookies themselves. So when I got comments that I was trying to get rich off of these fortune cookies, I kind of just had to laugh it off, particularly due to the costs just to ship. I'm definitely a believer that free shipping is a way better customer experience, so it's something I wanted to do, but I think it's interesting that because we've become so accustomed to free shipping, it's hard to appreciate how that impacts a seller's profits. The truth is that this was not a lucrative venture. Nonetheless, I really liked doing it because I was able to experience trying a production run of something. It was also my first time selling to a stranger, so it was all a fun learning experience. I also just liked being able to make these to show appreciation for folks that wanted to support me. I'm truly humbled and flattered, of course, that anyone would take an interest in these things. So this is the end. I don't plan on making any more, though I admit I am considering making a run of them with holes so that they can be hung as Christmas ornaments at the end of the year, but we'll see about that. In the meantime, I'm working on a mug design, which is something I'm hoping more people will be interested in like I am, because it's a bit more of a practical product, so stay tuned for more.